Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from the freezing alpine tracking grids of the Wyoming wilderness and game warden investigations and plunge straight into the sterile, calculation-heavy tracking matrices of locked psychiatric wards, weaponized psychological obsession, and the fiercely protective world of a forensic psychotherapist asset running high-stakes diagnostic clinical loops. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, secure treatment pavilions of North London, the exclusive procedural grid of an active multi-layered emotional cover-up, and the lethal analytical parameters of an intense mind-based survival matrix with the silent patient, the exceptional pulse-pounding structural deployment marking the monumental, globally dominant, chart-topping psychological masterpiece engineered by the absolute undisputed sovereign of high-velocity clinical suspense, sharp Greek mythology profiling, and rogue analytical statecraft, Alex Michaelides. This introductory tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, underestimated criminal therapist asset running an unyielding diagnostic loop, a completely mute female painter asset who brutally executed her husband, and an absolute defense of an individual's final personal sovereignty metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers, where an endangered, hyper-observant mental health protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged forensic interviews, backroom institutional gaslighting, and a deadly ring of active administrative suppression while running a blind therapeutic loop inside a completely compromised psychiatric facility where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated trauma-probing boundaries, and absolute mental stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory fixer network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, obsessed therapist vows to uncover why a famous painter shot her husband and went completely silent, diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. Michaelides completely dominates the high-precision clinical instincts meet institutional hostility dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vanguards like Gillian Flynn, Paula Hawkins, B.A. Paris, and Ruth Ware, while treating realistic psychiatric facility logistics, complex artistic alignment arcs, and protective high-density facility extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central elite operative, Theo Faber, operating under a severe calculation handicap of deep-seated historical trauma vulnerabilities, a crumbling marital framework, and a hyper-visible targeting profile by the clinic's ruling medical copos. Behind Theo's rigorous clinical footprints and tense patient journal ledger logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply buried institutional secrets, and sharp high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Theo's collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a lifetime of navigating unstable psychological structures and studying complex cognitive schemas, his entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from defensive facility board members, parsing complex behavioral shifts from his silent, cold-eyed patient asset Alicia Berenson, and shielding his vulnerable sanctuary nodes from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches his active scanning perimeter. Alicia's tragic, blood-stained domestic history instantly cross-references with a high-level calculated malice, designed to guarantee an ancient Alcesti-style mythological trauma reenactment. As the hostile syndicate's mobilization phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier inside the secure facility known as the Grove, a series of suspicious evidence sabotage attempts, targeted witness intimidation setups, and calculation-heavy mid-treatment countertransference ambushes threaten to permanently eliminate Theo from the active clinical registry. The official diagnostic metrics of the global tracking centers flash white-hot when his defensive investigative maneuvers and raw cognitive output reveal that his initial operational alignment is radically, impossibly altering the institution's historical balance of power. The standard boundaries of routine facility jurisdiction and peaceful psychiatric compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonist runs completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. He is thrust directly into an active, invisible war across the London art scene and clinical underworld, where deceptive psychiatric directors, highly manipulative family heirs,
and a calculation-heavy psychological shadow syndicate launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress his survival data stream. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the isolated therapy rooms, dark suburban surveillance perimeters, and private fortified residential chambers into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective veteran protagonist is forced to deploy his massive intuitive tradecraft, elite clinical environment mapping skills, and raw intellectual stamina to repair his perimeter and secure true institutional advancement before the next systemic judicial realignment permanently deletes his case file. When deceptive regional red herrings, corrupted financial ledgers, and calculation-heavy tactical ambushes launch aggressive plays to delete his path, his survival instincts engage their final deployment tracks. Every midnight archival excavation, every silent choice to stand off against a hostile clinical supervisor behind standard security barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at his reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the medical elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as the author reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial setup or managing a hostile clinical interrogation. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of institutional hierarchy and high society supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark, possessive loyalty around their union, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure his sanctuary, our resilient hero must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of his final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, forensic noir suspense, locked ward institutional drama, and high-velocity contemporary mystery masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one whispered session triggers a fatal mind game showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates, carries massive structural weight. Michaelides writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, expensive oil paint turpentine, sterile latex, cold air-conditioned air, spilled copper, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes community dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The Silent Patient is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes action fiction and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell with your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.